Bueno, chavales, vamos a ver este vídeo que está dando mucho que hablar. Este tío de M Microtransactions, es como se llama su canal, y ahora tiene uno de Diablo 4. Es uno de los streamers más famosos y además que más está despuntando, con Diablo 4. Este vídeo se ha vuelto un poquito viral porque habla de la verdad a partir de nivel 80 en adelante. Vamos a verlo porque creo que toca temas delicados y él sí que ha visto qué es lo que ocurre en Diablo 4 en el endgame. Vamos a ello. Pongo los subtítulos en español, a veces va un poquito rápido, lo iré parando, pero bueno, si tenéis cualquier duda, preguntadlo en los comentarios que lo miraré.
Let's talk about how I honestly feel in Diablo 4. I've gotten to level 82. I have basically completed my renown at this point. I have got all the altars of Lilith. Obviously beat the campaign and all of that. I'm in world tier 4. My gear is looking pretty stout. I don't really know what left I could really farm at this point other than experience and do the pinnacle boss and, you know, like a few other things at the moment. I've farmed, God knows, too many legendaries, done a bunch of PvP.
Por lo que he visto está jugando mucho al PvP y ahora está mostrándole las orejas y tiene una build, una configuración de hombre oso muy buena. Yo la he visto y destroza bastante.
See, I got some ears in here too. I've been doing PvP, been playing with friends. I've also been playing solo. So I've had a pretty good amount of experience. And this is coming from a druid's perspective. Now, I have seen a lot of feedback related to this game, both extremely positive as well as extremely negative. And I have yet to find too much of good, nuanced conversation around the good and the bad around this game. I'm going to do my very best to ride that line fairly. So let's talk about the good first.
No sé si habéis visto antes a este streamer, pero es un tío que analiza los juegos muy rápidamente, el tío piensa muy rápido, pero lo hace de una manera muy constructiva y objetiva. Y aunque las cosas sean malas, él intenta mostrar lo bueno, lo que objetivamente es bueno, y ser realista con las malas. Vamos a ver, que tengo curiosidad.
What I like about the game. I think the game, people say, is overwhelmingly complicated, but I actually think it's fairly decently simple. I think the skill tree isn't too confusing. It looks very confusing at the beginning, but legitimately all of these are linear. So this isn't something where you really have to worry about matching things too much. I think the Paragon board looks very confusing until you actually try using it. And then you realize, yes, it's still a little bit confusing, but it's not really as bad as it seems. If you can understand 90-degree angles and turning things, you can basically understand a Paragon board once you actually get your...
Bueno, lo primero yo creo que no tiene razón, bajo mi punto de vista, porque aunque el sistema de talentos dice que parece sencillo y el sistema de Paragon también, no todo el mundo es un hardcore player. No todo el mundo le mete tantas horas como él ni analiza juegos, ¿eh? Y que a este tío me gusta mucho, no lo estoy criticando, pero hay que tener un punto de vista más realista, yo creo, de que hay gente que, la mayoría de personas que jugamos, pues tenemos nuestra vida y es difícil entender tan rápidamente como él a lo mejor los talentos. Y sobre todo cuando te estás pasando la campaña yo me he dado cuenta que tienes que estudiarlos bien y tienes que entenderlos y tienes que buscar las estadísticas secundarias para poder avanzar de contenido. No es un juego tan sencillo como parece y yo creo que tiene un poquito más de complejidad.
Hands on it. Just looking at it looks very confusing. The way items work, the way legendaries work, the way uniques work, the way you acquire these all seem decently well explained, though, and I will say there are some things, for instance, like aspects having different tiers, for instance, the ancestral and the sacred being different colors and literally named different. Offensive aspect of the raging, this is an ancestral legendary, but this one is a sacred legendary, and having absolute, basically no difference in terms of what these items actually do, I think can also be extremely confusing as well. For instance, I have very often seen people say things like ancestral legendary aspects are better than normal. See how this one, it goes 1 to 5 seconds and is a maximum row of 5 seconds. But then this is a normal legendary ring that goes 1 to 5 seconds as well. It just says 3 there. And the reason people don't even realize it goes all the way to 5 seconds is because they have their tooltips off. So, and this is by default. So they have their advanced tooltips off by default. Shout out to Woody Joe actually for informing me about this.
Vale, lo primero, por si no lo habéis visto, de lo que se ha hablado en Diablo 4 es que los aspectos legendarios de calidades de objetos más altas, como objetos ancestrales, se decía que estos aspectos iban a ser mejores que los aspectos de objetos normales. Lo que está diciendo es que no es así. Pueden ser exactamente iguales. De hecho, creo que no son mejores. A lo mejor en alguno, ya me diréis si lo habéis visto. Pero simplemente tienes que ponerte en las opciones avanzadas de objeto para poder ver los rangos en los que te pueden salir los poderes de los aspectos legendarios para que puedas compararlos pues debidamente, ¿sabes? Para que veas que son lo mismo, ya, aunque sea ancestral o normal.
because I didn't know this originally. And then they see it says 3 seconds here as well, and they think that one's lower than my aspect that's 5. So ancestral is higher. And so there's a lot of misinformation and confusion coming from a large amounts of players in the game, and that can get spread. So I do think there are some things that are fairly poorly explained in the game. However, once you understand the fundamentals of the mechanic, it becomes significantly more enjoyable. I do think there is something to be said for the world size. I feel like the actual size of the world, the fact that these Legion events, which by the way, you can farm free horse cosmetic from here that's like a ghost horse, really cool. I think that the actual size of the map is significant.
No sé qué os parece el mapa, chavales, pero a mí me parece enorme, ¿eh? A mí me ha sorprendido muchísimo el tamaño, a bien, y me encanta la cantidad de rincones que hay y lo diferentes que son cada uno de ellos, ¿eh? O sea, yo me he perdido por ahí para buscar zonas y he llegado a momentos en los que he pensado, pero esta zona, ¿por qué está tan escondida y lo guapa que está? De repente hay una tormenta y tenía que bajar por unas escaleras, y había enemigos, y había un élite y estaba guapísimo. Y es un rincón ahí que no te llevan en la misión principal. Yo he flipado.
Significant when I'm teleporting around the different areas. I do feel the variety in terms of what the landscape looks like. I do think it is fair to say that what a lot of people, the feedback I have read is that people were surprised that so many of the minions look alike. This is true. It is a Diablo game. Hell is running over, and a lot of the demons are twins, apparently. So I do believe that there's something to be said for that. I don't know how you fix that within the ARPG hack and slash genre, to be fair, but I do understand that criticism, and I accept that. Now, in terms of...
Ha dicho que muchos de los enemigos son muy similares, que la gente se ha quejado de ello, que él lo acepta y lo entiende. Yo también creo que es normal, pero a mí no me molesta. Porque a mí matar esqueletos me gusta y que sean un poco diferentes. Bueno, a mí no me parece que haya tan poca diversidad, pero él sabrá mejor.
The early, mid, and late game, I would like to get into that feedback as well. I think the early game is the most exciting. You're pushing through the story. What you're trying to do is fairly well explained. You're trying to do the yellow stories. They are very easily marked. There is good...
Ahora está hablando de la diferencia entre early, mid a late game. O sea, el juego al principio, cuando te pasas la campaña, cuando te has pasado la campaña y dónde está él en el endgame, en las actividades de nivel más alto y más difíciles.
Good story dialogue. There is very good voice acting. This is Blizzard after all, so there's also very good cutscenes. Me personally, I found some of the boss fights to be way better than some of the other boss fights. I'll put it that way in order to keep the spoilers free. However, I have heard mixed reviews on the boss fights, so I will take that one under advisement as this is just my own personal opinion.
A mí lo que me pareció es que las peleas de jefe, muchas están muy poco curradas. Es lo que también está diciendo él. No sé si es exactamente lo mismo, pero hay jefes que me parecen un relleno que te cagas. Que cogen un minion, lo pone más grande, le pone una barra de vida más larga, pero no te dan ningún trasfondo ni nada y tampoco tiene ninguna mecánica.
I think it is not clear upon immediately playing the game what to do after the campaign, and I actually believe this is a good thing. I think the fact that it does not immediately tell you go and farm nightmare dungeons, go and max your renown, but instead you get the sense of the world has opened up to you. I actually enjoy that a good deal. I am an old school RuneScape player.
Ha dicho que cuando acabas la campaña el juego no te dice claramente lo que tienes que hacer, en verdad sí. Te da claramente una misión que es ir al árbol de los susurros y empezar a hacer eso.
I've played RuneScape since 2001 when it came out from Devious Mud. I'm actually older than I look, to be honest with you guys. So for that reason, I very much enjoy open world. I do not like hand-holding. I like games that give me a character, and I feel like I am brutally trying to survive within the elements around me and figure out what's going on in the game. So I like that. The only thing I don't like is terrible, trashy UIs and bad quality of life. I would say the UIs could be improved. I'm not calling them trashy. I'm saying those are things I don't like. There is aspects of that I don't like. I would say right now...
Está hablando de que la interfaz no es lo mejor. No le gusta mucho.
Having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 gem slots all slotted up with gems is extremely annoying. Having no gem bag is extremely annoying. And having inventory...
Pero esto seguramente van a meter un tab, ¿sabes? Una pestaña para las gemas y ya está. Eso de tenerlas en el inventario también lo odio.
Space. You guys saw already my, let me walk over here and show you. You guys already saw my storage stash. And having a storage stash that is completely full with legendaries is very annoying. You might think, okay, this sounds like suffering some success. Oh, damn, you got so many legendaries, you know, fuck you. But that's not what I'm saying. I cannot not pick these up if I want to. These are forced to be picked up to me. Unfortunately, I'm going to turn the alerts off so I don't keep spamming. Unfortunately here, these are forced for me to acquire. The reason is if a legendary drops in the field and I do not want that legendary and I leave the dungeon, when I go to my stash, that legendary shows up right here. And it gives me two options. I can either put it in my inventory or I can put it in the stash. Does not give me an auto salvage ability, does not give me anything like that. Also, the stash has no way for me to filter or search through, basically forcing me.
Eso es verdad, eso es verdad. Si estáis viendo las pestañas del alijo, no tienes filtros ni buscador. Te puede dar un dolor de cabeza para encontrar algo, un anillo que te dé daño de sangrado, por ejemplo, va a ser una locura. Y eso es un diseño muy pobre, ¿eh? Hoy en día eso es muy pobre. Venga, no me fastidies, que en otros juegos eso está diseñado ya desde el minuto 1 en 2023.
Chest plates, etc. until I find one I want. So very often what I find myself doing is not wanting to look through 3,000 different items to find min-max rows from these tiny little texts that my eyes are blurring from playing the game 24 hours a day literally anyway. So instead I'm just crunching everything and not giving a fuck.
Dice que se queda ciego ya de jugar.
So I think that is probably some poor gameplay design in terms of the stash and the UI with these items. Now, that is going to be probably my primary negative feedback. There's one other point I would like to make, which is the dungeons. There are a lot of them. You are not required to clear all of them, but there are plenty of codexes here I have already done, as you can see, and there are plenty more still left to acquire. I do like the variety of having the legendary aspects at a minimum row. I think that's smart. So there is still a way and a reason to farm normal legendaries and not just use codex for everything. But this also makes certain builds more viable early and allows certain types of players to be able to build certain types of classes early.
Bueno, está hablando, por si acaso no seguís bien, está hablando de que las mazmorras le gustan, o al menos la parte que le gusta es que puedes obtener poderes legendarios y eso te permite hacerte, bueno, pues no tienes que esperar a que te caiga el objeto legendario para poder hacerte la configuración que buscas. Que eso está bien, con el códice de poder.
Than otherwise would have been possible with just pure RNG of getting the legendary items. This is almost like sort of being able to craft legendaries or set items from Diablo 3. This is the way of guaranteeing certain items. I think this was probably a necessity to keep players encouraged because of the difficulty of the game. Now, speaking of the difficulty of the game, I've seen mixed opinions. I've seen people speaking that the game plays very slow, that the gameplay is very hard, it is very brutal, and I enjoy that, is what people will say. Then I will see people that say this is way too easy, I'm blasting through everything, I got to in-game in 2 days, and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do now. So my addressing to these points is, really, I have multiple points to this, but I'm going to start with the most obvious, which is that players like me who are playing 24 hours a day in order to actually either make content creation on this or learn the entire game before the casual player in order to explain things to the casual player for the sake of media like YouTube views and Twitch growth, etc. We are not the standard players and should not be balanced around. The game should be balanced around the casual dad who...
Está hablando ahora de la dificultad del juego y de cómo hay opiniones mixtas en internet. Hay que tener cuidado, como él dice, de que las opiniones que tenemos los creadores de contenido que estamos jugando tantísimo al juego y que lo estudiamos mucho antes de jugarlo, no se puede copiar uno a uno con la opinión del jugador medio, porque nuestras opiniones son mucho más estudiadas, analizadas y más hardcore, ¿sabes? Entonces pueden estar difuminadas. Que un tío que esté jugando todo el día diga que el juego es fácil, claro, si lo has estado estudiando antes, es normal que te parezca fácil, pero para un jugador medio, pues puede que sea difícil. Hay que tener en cuenta eso, hay que tener los pies en la tierra con ese tema.
Comes home after a long day of work. He has kids that are yelling. He wants to sit down with his 1 beer a day and play for 2 hours. I think that is the target audience because this is now Diablo. The majority of the people playing.
Me ha gustado mucho. El jugador objetivo de este juego es un padre que el niño está gritando y que se abre una cerveza para jugar 2 horas, que ha encontrado un hueco al Diablo. Para esta persona está hecho Diablo 4 en particular, porque hay muchas. Y es normal si a esta persona le parece difícil, pero bueno, que metiéndole horas, si estás ahí, ya te digo que le pillarás el tranquillo. Es un poco estudiarte el personaje y ya está.
They're in 30 to 45 age bracket. They're old school gamers that enjoy the game very much, and they do not have 24 hours a day to play this game. So I do believe that while I agree it is possible for people like me to get to the point of now all I'm doing is essentially grinding the same thing over and over again very quickly, I do not believe that should be in the conversation in terms of overall complete balance. I think very often the casual average game player, because I know there's hardcore community in these games, I understand, I myself am one. Again, I play RuneScape, takes the most hours out of any game, the max, okay? That's just true. I understand that there is audience for these things, but the vast majority of players are not the 1%, like maybe you, the viewer, who is a very good long-term PC hardcore gamer. That is a small percentage of the players, and the most players are probably never even going to hit level 82. I don't think the majority of players are going to farm all 180 or something altars of Lilith that I farmed in order just to get the +2 strength on each, type of...
Un jugador casual, y con casual quiero decir normal, no va a buscarse todos los altares de Lilith. No se va a buscar todas las mazmorras, incluso las que no son de su clase. Normal.
One of these, I don't see that happening, nor do I see the average player going into the Paragon board and spending 15 hours of their day while they drink their one beer to be able to figure this out. I do think what we will see is a vast majority of those casual players looking up a couple guides, a couple of tips and tricks. I myself have seen those search terms coming through. I know you guys are looking for them, figuring out the game on that level, and then playing through a pre-planned build. I think that's going to be a lot of players. However, in my personal mind, this would be a mistake. And the reason I say this is this game is actually, I think, very well suited for that casual type of player. I think the world tiers, seeing that there's only 4 of them, meaning every time you go from a world tier, it feels like a significant accomplishment. When you start in world tier 1 and then you bump up to world tier 2, if you're not, and again, if you're min-maxing, you should start in world tier 1, as it is going to be faster and you will blast through it faster, so you can get to tier 3 faster and you skip to its entirety. But if you are the average user, you will start in maybe 1, think this is too easy, or maybe you just don't want to blast through things, you go to 2, and then each and every minion is going to feel like its own challenge, and that might actually be something that you enjoy personally.
Bueno, está hablando de las dificultades y voy a dar mi pequeña opinión aquí, ¿vale, chavales? Si veis que el juego es muy difícil, como puedes empezar en dificultad 1 o 2, elegir la 1. Pero yo os recomiendo que os pongáis en dificultad 2 cuanto antes y que aceptéis que el juego es un poquito más lento y tal vez a veces difícil. Porque os va a forzar a... y de una manera bastante suave y que está bien. De vez en cuando pues vais a morir, de vez en cuando vais a tener que mirar un poquito los talentos. Y esto está bien porque luego si quieres hacer cualquier cosa en el juego, vas a tener que pasar a dificultad 2. O sea, es atrasar lo inevitable. Entonces yo te recomiendo que te pases a la 2 y que aceptes que el juego a veces va un poquito despacio, que aceptes que a veces vas a morir. No es un Dark Souls, pero que a veces va a pasar. Y está bien, porque luego vas a estudiar un poquito el personaje y te va a permitir disfrutar más. A mí me ha hecho eso y ahora, gracias a lo que he aprendido, que soy un jugador muy casual, gracias a esos momentos en los que he muerto he dicho, a ver, esto está mal. Y me he reorganizado las habilidades, me he estudiado un poco la rama de talentos y he tenido que hacer varias pruebas, pero ahora digo, ahora entiendo mejor el personaje. Y también me permite encontrar otras configuraciones que las entiendo más fácilmente porque ya me he mirado los talentos, ¿sabes? Ya no es como una nube de talentos y de habilidades que no sabía para qué son, ¿sabes? Que yo iba ahí en plan línea recta y tal. No, ahora digo en plan, me acuerdo que estuve probando el torbellino, me acuerdo que estuve probando las espinas, ¿sabes? Pero esto es porque morí bastante en dificultad 2.
I also think that the discoverability of this game is insane. I think when you walk around the world and you discover these different dungeons, the different players that you'll see, the different events that will happen, you'll notice the codexes that will have rewards in them, even quests that are sort of hidden. Like, for instance, I have some areas I haven't even uncovered yet and I've been playing the whole time. I think that is a fantastic addition to a Diablo game. I have played Diablo 3 significantly, and in my time playing Diablo 3, I felt like every single map was basically a linear path. It is me walking down a sidewalk to get somewhere, whereas in this, I actually do feel like I'm on a map. I'm on a landmass. I'm on...
Está comparando Diablo 4 con Diablo 3 en cuanto al mapa. Es tan grande que sí que te da la sensación, está explicando, de que estás en el mapa, de que estás en el mundo de Santuario. Cuando en Diablo 3 ibas de la mano del punto A al punto B, del punto B al punto C, y no te daba mucho la sensación de que estuvieras en una zona determinada del mapa. En un mundo, ¿sabes? Aquí sí, está muy guapo.
A area, a state, whatever you want to call it. I'm in a world, is what it actually feels like. That is a step up in terms of environment, which I think is heavily important for the average player. I think that's heavily important to feel like you're within an actual world. I think this is doubled down by the fact that when you're walking around on the map, you'll also very much experience unique type of monsters. So they'll have like a star that will show up and have a unique monster, and also the side quests, which are crucially important, by the way, for min-maxers for renown. You'll want to do these blue quests. Don't sleep on them. It's a mistake I made. I also believe that these side quests do a good job at getting you to areas that you don't normally go. Like, you tell me what's right here other than Altar of Lilith that's down there. There's nothing here. So in order to get you there, they got a side quest to get you there.
Está diciendo que las misiones secundarias le gustan porque te obliga a llegar a lugares del mapa que de normal no explorarías. Yo no estoy tan de acuerdo porque a mí las misiones secundarias me aburren mucho. Me parecen poco desarrolladas, por la mayoría muy aburridas, sosas y que tienen unos toques muy malos. O sea, recoge plantas, aplaude a la gente, no sé, tienes que hacer cosas un poco demasiado de MMORPG que a mí no me gustan. Y eso que yo he sido fanatísimo del WoW. Pero bueno, parece un poquito más Lost Ark, la parte negativa de eso. Igualmente, yo creo que puedes explorar sin las misiones secundarias. Y bueno, como dan renombre, al final las vas a hacer.
Experience that. I also think the fact that after you beat the campaign, you can make a new character, skip the campaign, and start in multiple different regions is actually a very great quality of life for people that play through the game, beat the campaign, and then just want to try a new class because they're not trying to go to level 100 and min-max one class. Level 100 takes a very long time. The experience leveling in this game is very different than some of the previous games. And so for that reason, I think...
Bueno, dos cosas las resumo muy rápidamente. Le gusta mucho que puedas saltarte la campaña después de que te la pases con el primer personaje para poder probar otros personajes. A mí también me mola mucho. Y lo segundo que estaba diciendo... se me ha ido un momento a la cabeza. Ah, sí, que subir a nivel 100 cuesta mucho en este juego. Bastante, ¿eh? O sea, han tenido que estar prácticamente sin dormir. A mí me gusta, va despacio el nivel.
Previous games. And so for that reason, I think this was also a good addition. I also want to mention that I'm seeing a lot of people get very angry about balance changes. I myself did sort of a half-hearted meme video on the Druid balance changes. I was kind of joking around, but at the most part, I thought Druid legitimately, I was surprised with the nerfs. Even people like me who are complaining about nerfs to classes for the in-game, my opinion, while it may matter, does not matter as much as balancing the game around the average user and what they experience. And I think that average user, the changes were probably for the best. I think trying to make sure that some classes are...
Está hablando de los cambios y equilibrios de personajes, porque Blizzard introdujo un parche hace poquito en la salida en el que había habilidades que las han nerfeado, por ejemplo, una habilidad del hombreoso muy famosa, en la transformación, la Ultimate, y otras del bárbaro igual. Y entonces, pues como siempre hay polémica, ¿no? A ver, para el usuario medio es que te da igual, que te bajen el daño de una habilidad, que te suban otra, porque más o menos una cosa por la otra lo están equilibrando relativamente bien. Y ya se está dando cuenta uno de que para disfrutar del juego igualmente te da un poco igual, que más hay muchas builds viables y que está bien, que no pasa nada, no hay que hacer mucho drama con los nerfeos.
Are not so complete outliers that every single person feels like if you don't play this class, you're just stupid. I hate it in games when I join a game and everyone's like, you're playing that class? What a loser. I hate that personally. I think I really enjoy being able to feel like I identify with my character, which this game does very well. When I'm playing Druid, I wanted to play Druid because I wanted to shapeshift. I wanted to be a bear, mostly. That was like 90% of my reason. I also wanted to be a wolf. That was the other 10%. I got what I wanted. It happens to be the class is actually quite good. And that both of those builds, by the way, Stormwolf actually seems like it has some... I have all of the uniques now for the Druid. I will do a video on this, but Stormwolf seems like it has...
Está hablando de que elige la clase que más te guste. Porque da igual que esté mejor o peor. Por ejemplo, este tío se hizo de Microtransactions, que es su canal. Se hizo el druida, que al principio parecía que estaba tan mal, y se lo está pasando de puta madre. Y está bien, y va bien, y consigue hacer muertes en PvP sin problema.
Something coming. I have some footage of this. So, in my own opinion, where I'm going with this, and you're probably seeing me mention quite often, is this game is probably a 7 out of 10. For min-maxers, maybe a 6 out of 10. For people that want to grind through, blast 100 and all that, I find those people, the conversations I'm having with those players, are getting bored quicker than they expected. However, for the average gamer, the 30 to 45-year-old dad who has a couple hours a day, I'm finding them enjoying the game even more than they expected. So there is a yin-yang balance. I think they sacrifice some of the focus on this hardcore community in order to engage a little bit more of the average old-school gamer who maybe doesn't have as much ability to be that hardcore gamer that they fell in love with gaming.
Está comparando lo que le está pareciendo a los jugadores hardcore, que dice más o menos un 6, un 7 de 10, comparado con los jugadores casuals, con los padres de familia, por así decirlo, que a estos a los segundos les está gustando mucho más de lo que esperaban y que Blizzard está compensando tener menos contentos a los jugadores hardcore y tener más contentos al jugador promedio, como yo y como tú seguramente. A mí me parece normal y me parece bien, pero yo, que antiguamente era jugador hardcore y aún tengo un poco el filtro del jugador hardcore, yo os digo que este juego también tiene muchísimo grindeo, min-max y pensar muy bien la build y la configuración si de verdad quieres hacer el endgame, ¿eh? La dificultad 4 es oficialmente difícil, o sea, es difícil. Y las mazmorras de pesadilla en su nivel más alto, bueno, hay bastantes vídeos como el de Cid criticando qué ocurre a partir del nivel 90, que es difícil. O sea, yo creo que a los dos se les está gustando, pero bueno, es verdad que los jugadores hardcore a lo mejor lo ven más sencillo comparado con Path of Exile.
In the beginning. I think this is a fine sacrifice because while you might think that focusing on the hardcore community that's just doubling down, playing the games all the time is their core fan base and they should appeal to these people, the reality is the core fan base is that dad who no longer has the ability, or that mom, okay, I'm not trying to do a gender thing, that doesn't have that ability anymore to play the games that they love and they desire because life happened. And I think Diablo 4 does actually a pretty good job at reestablishing this type of game into immediately being enjoyable for those types of players. So they might feel left behind in terms of levels, but they don't feel left behind in terms of loving the game. That's what I have found personally from talking to players. It's what I have experienced with my own gameplay, and this stands true. The reason.
¿Veis lo que os decía de este tío? Tiene un punto de vista muy bueno, es muy objetivo y se mantiene realista. Está hablando de que este juego es para jugadores más casual o no hardcore y que en verdad está bien. Es que los hardcore son una comunidad muy pequeñita.
For me, I did find the in-game come sooner than I imagined. However, I found myself getting the in-game to be more enjoyable than I thought. And I have since upgraded my rating from a 7 out of 10 for myself personally. This doesn't have to do with the previous ratings I just mentioned. But for myself, on the betas, I rated a 7 out of 10. I thought that was very fair. I've since upgraded to an 8 out of 10. I will say I have...
Chavales, si este tío le da un 8 de 10 y este tío es muy crítico, ¿eh? Y sabe muchísimo de Diablo. Bien.
One other harsh criticism, other than the filtering and stash issues with the items and the no search feature issues and the gem bag issues. There's one other thing, which is that dungeons were supposed to be fixed. They're not supposed to be kind of backtracking. I feel like putting it, if you have a line where you have to go this way, then back, then this way, but you take that line, you make it a circle where you have to go around, it's still the same distance, and that's effectively what happens. So I feel like I am still running the same amount of distance as I expected to with backtracking. I also find that the dungeons themselves do lack a little bit of variety, but they put a billion goddamn dungeons in this game. So they repeat some of the boss.
Las mazmorras se repiten un poquito y hay problemas con las mazmorras de que tienes que estar a veces, tienes que buscar a los enemigos, tienes que volver hacia atrás por donde has venido. A mí me ha pasado, a veces molesto.
Those are really my only complaints. Other than that, I think this game, if you're the person who loved gaming growing up and has since lost the ability to play games 12 hours a day, like people like me that have no life other than video gaming, I think this game was designed for you. That's what I think. You know, I think there's a lot of conversation around the other side of the community, the hardcore, the niche, the small group. You know, I'm in that group, but I don't think it was designed for me. I think this game was designed for you.
¿Qué os ha parecido este vídeo, chavales? ¿Qué os ha parecido? A mí me ha gustado mucho. Me gusta porque este tío le da un punto de vista muy realista y si alguien que sabe mucho de Diablo está diciendo objetivamente esto es un juego 8 de 10, incluso para él que es hardcore, yo creo que está bien y se mantiene realista. Por lo que veis, el endgame debe de ser más entretenido de lo que a lo mejor parecía. A mí me parecía que iba a ser más casual este juego. Ya me cayó un poco de lluvia por dar esa opinión, pero creo que está bastante bien. Bueno, ya me diréis lo que opináis en los comentarios, si estáis por el endgame, si estáis aún jugando la campaña, qué opináis de las dificultades de mundo, si son complejos los talentos y el sistema Paragón. Estamos aquí para echaros un cable, ¿eh? Si necesitáis cualquier ayuda, decírmelo o uniros al Discord también, pondré el link. Y nada, chavales, espero que lo estéis pasando genial con la campaña y disfrutar mucho y nos vemos pronto. Venga, chao.